Well, if you're new, my name is Daniel Wyatt. I'm the CEO and founder of Mixmaster Wyatt Academy and the course designer and the teacher. Mike Hooks is also here, who's the other half of the company, doing all technical things and many other things. Justin in the building. What's up, Justin? Welcome everybody. I'm gonna run a couple. This presentation today is gonna run probably a little less than an hour. Uh, I'm not going to take questions during the presentation, but I will hang out and try to answer a few questions at the end. And then, of course, I'll show you where to continue the dialogue if there are more and more questions. But let's do this. While people are making their way to their virtual seats, let's run a couple quick polls, 5 or 6 or something. These help us a lot, actually. So I thank you in advance. And they're easy. And they're fun. Like, which DAW do you use for mixing? Ableton, Logic, Pro Tools / other, Studio One, Cubase. Let's see who the winner is today. Vote, vote, vote. If you're just getting here, vote. All right, let's see. We'll close the poll. Today the winner is Logic. Excellent. Pro Tools second. Not much Ableton today. Interesting. A little bit of Studio One and some Cubase. Very cool. Okay, good. Good to know. Next question. Which plugins do you use for mixing and mastering? You can select one or more. FabFilter, Slate, UAD, Isotope, or Plugin Alliance, which is kind of a broader thing. Waves. Okay, got you, Marcel. If you don't see it in the list, we only can put in 5. So if you're anything else, throw it in the chat. We do keep track of it. We actually do. Always want to know what you're doing. All right. Let's see how we did. FabFilter, Slate. Yes, and FabFilter always wins, but that's a big number for Slate, and that's awesome. UAD also strong, Isotope strong, Plugin Alliance very strong. Interesting, very cool. Okay, good. Yeah, DMG. Yep. All right. Is this your first Mixmaster Wyatt experience? Your first Mixmaster Wyatt Academy experience? This should be easy. And the answer is no. Lots of returning people, but also some yes. So welcome, new people. Love to have you. This is how we do it. Every week, several days a week, online classes just like this. And all you returning people, fantastic to see you. Happy Monday to you guys, everybody. How did you find us? Can you remember? Especially for some of you returning people. Think back. Use your memory. How did you find us? And new people, let us know. At a bar. Yes, that's probably true. Which bar? Vote, vote, vote. Kind of even split of Google and Facebook, a little bit of YouTube, and some forums. Good. The power of forums and the power of friends. The channel strip bar. That's funny, Balaj. A channel strip club. It was a strip club, a channel strip club. Dear, I'm stuck at the strip club, the channel strip club. I don't know. We'll work on that. That's good. All right. Sense of humor on a Monday. I like it. This is a really important one. They're all important. But how do you like to learn these days? With a teacher and other students and a fixed schedule, or do you just want to do self-directed self-study with videos and then show up for a weekly office hour and ask questions and get live feedback? How do you like to work? How do you like to learn? Vote, vote, vote. Vote, vote, vote. Well, isn't that amazing? This is really interesting, you guys. We have 34 people here so far, and it's 50-50. And that's what we found at our school. It's split down the middle. Some people want videos and to be left on their own to go through them, but they do like to show up for office hours and to get feedback. And other people like to move through sequentially with a teacher and student. So, and we have both. So that's why we have both, evidently. Good. Last question. Last question, and then we'll jump in. How important is weekly live feedback for you and your works in progress? We have every week, we have 2 hours a week where people show up and they play stuff and we have a live group that gives live feedback. How important is that to you? I love it personally. As a teacher, it's amazing. And other students seem to like it, but how important is it to you? Good. A couple of people not important, and that's fine. Some people it's important, but a lot of people it's very important. I think it's very important, but that's very interesting. Okay, and so do a lot of you. Excellent. Okay, let's jump right into the presentation and can everybody see my screen? Yes? Okay, beautiful. And you can see this beautiful Slate Distressor. Everything's working? Okay, lovely. So here's a couple interesting things. When I went to prepare this presentation, and originally the concept, we had done a Slate versus UAD webinar, and it's on YouTube. And it was interesting because, a lot of people couldn't, were on one side or the fence or the other with the Slate and UAD thing. And, obviously those who have UAD, they spend a lot of money. So there's no way after spending thousands of dollars that these Slate plugins, which are $15 a month, should be able to compete. That's the attitude, and that's very understandable. If you spend $200,000 on a Ferrari, you don't want to feel that a $40,000 car could compete with that. But the fact is that with the question of Slate or UAD, what we found at the school really is it's Slate and UAD. It's both. And that there's a way to use it because the Slate, for big mixes, you can keep a lot of stuff virtual. It's very DSP efficient. The UAD stuff sounds incredible. It's super high resolution, but it's hard to have, 10 UAD plugins live on a really big mix and survive it. So what we found is that they work together incredibly well. And you can use the UAD stuff on buses, where you can't really render stuff because it's live on a bus, or not easily. And then on the individual channels, the Slate really comes through. So they work incredibly well together. And some of the plugins, if you watch the YouTube video, compare very, very well. The 1176 collections compare well. The tape machines between UAD and Slate did not or are not currently comparing well. So it's not just one company versus another. It's very, very specific which lines you're comparing. So which is wonderful because it creates a journey for us to figure out which ones are comparable, which ones we love, which ones we could love more, and to integrate them into a system, right? So here's the funny thing with the Distressor. When people ask me, they're building a studio and they want to record stuff and they want to record vocals and they want to record drums or even synths or drum machines or whatever, I always say you should compress on your way into the recording. And which means that you need to own 2 analog compressors or 1 stereo one for 2 channels, because recording is cool, even if you're doing stuff in the box. And I always recommend to people that you get a Distressor. Why? And I've been doing that for over 10 years. If you're only going to own 1 physical analog hardware compressor for vocals or whatever, get a Distressor. And the reason is a couple things. One, they're incredibly clean, but they can be dirty. So you can make them run them. They can have a very, very clean sound, but then you can make them grungy. That's one thing. Two, they sort of have at least eight personalities inside of the compressor itself. And that's why it took the Slate people so long to model this stuff. It's 2 years it took them to model stuff, because it's not one compressor. It's more like 8 compressors, right? And so I think if you're going to only own one piece of hardware, you should have one that can mimic 8 different ones. That's another thing. The third thing is they can do a ridiculous amount of gain reduction and still sound good and musical. Some compressors, when you push them too hard, they sound terrible. The Distressor is an absolute beast, right? So those are the reasons that I absolutely love it. So when I started to prepare for today, it became very clear to me that this was going to have to sort of be like a 3-part series. So I'm going to have to get you guys back. And you guys know me and I know you, so we'll see each other and I'll let you know. Because there was absolutely no way I was going to cover everything today. And also, the Fatso isn't a good comparison for the Distressor. They're 2 different animals. The Distressor is like a super compressor. The Fatso, which I love, and we use it a lot in mastering and on buses and stuff, is a tape simulator with lots of controls. It does have compression. It does work as a great compressor, but it's not really a Distressor. So interesting. So I got in touch with Empirical Labs, and is anyone here from New Jersey? This should be this is a day of New Jersey pride, because that's where Empirical Labs is from. Okay, good. Jake, this is a day of pride. Good. Well, this is a day of New Jersey engineering, and they have what they call the arouser, right? These guys have a sense of humor. They call things trannies and arousers. It's funny. So I originally looked at it, and when I first looked at the arouser, it was kind of beta. And now it seems like it's getting more revved up, literally, no pun intended. And so they're sending me a NFR or whatever for the arouser. So I will be retesting that against the Distressor, for the FG Stress. Now, interestingly enough, the echoes in the digital forest are telling me that, and I'm not going to name names, that there's going to be another Distressor coming, another Distressor plugin coming. I'm not going to name the company. You didn't hear it from me. So now it's going to be very, very interesting, because like I said at the beginning, this was my favorite compressor, absolute favorite. And how we waited 20 years to get it as a plugin. And because it's so complex, even though it's simple, it took Slate 2 years to make it. And the funniest thing is, now that they finally release it, we're getting another one. So that's going to be the shootout, and it's going to be down the road. And I'm not going to say when it's going to be. I'm not going to announce it, but everybody here, you're on our email list, and I will let you know. But now, after 20 years of having no Distressors, we're going to have, I don't know, at least 3. And it's going to make for quite an interesting shootout. So if you came for the Fatso today, I apologize. We have lots of Fatso videos in our school. And if you join the school, if you want to know which course, hit us on the live chat and we'll get you there. I will talk about the Fatso as time goes on, but today we have enough to do just learning this very, very complex stressor, FG stress distressor. And like I said, we'll have another one soon if everyone is telling the truth, and it should be quite interesting. And we'll also look at the arouser, which has a bit of a different design. But today, let's become masters of the FG stress. Since so many Slate people are here, I have to say, I'm happy. I am super happy to have this. I've been waiting 20 years. And when it came out and I started to test it, I was scared, because I was scared I was going to hate it. And I don't hate it. I love it. I love it. And now for mixing, to be able to have this, and especially on a big mix, it will be my go-to musical analog style compressor, period. So anyway, it's a happy story. Let's take a look here. So up top is the input, and this is, there is no threshold, so it sort of has an input drive like a vintage compressor. And if the input will drive the compression, and it can also drive the saturation, right? So like I said, you can run this clean, you can sort of get into a soft clipping mode and a hard clipping mode. The two little lights next to this will tell you how far you are into the grunge category, but it's flexible. It can do either. Here's the attack and release. Fastest attack is 0. Slowest attack is 10. It doesn't really give you milliseconds. It's a little bit relative, and that's fine, right? Compression is a touchy-feely thing, thank God. Nothing like a track assistant is going to set your compressor for you. No AI, no artificial intelligence is going to get the right attack. It's regular human intelligence that will get it for you. Thank goodness. So anyway, there's your attack and release, continuous, not clicky. Release the same. Fastest release is 0. Slowest release is 10. And here's your output gain. There's no auto makeup gain, just, on this one, which would actually kind of be an interesting thing if they retro modded it. I personally love auto makeup gain when I'm compressing, not when I'm sidechaining, but when I'm compressing, because, why do we compress? We compress for power. And this Distressor has mad power. But I love to compress, and as I drive it, I love to hear, the compression that I'm creating. So, that's a modern digital thing. There are a couple analog compressors, API, that can do analog auto makeup gain, but this one doesn't. So anyway, if you start to compress it, you got to add some output. Now, they did add a cool feature that if you hold down the shift, that you get that sort of drive moving opposite to output thing. I would say so far it works pretty good. I think it could use a little bit of adjustment. It seems to turn it down too much. But it's a nice, I say setting all these things is something you want to do by hand, but this can sort of get you in a cool place, and then you can adjust it by hand from here. Here's where the magic happens, is in the ratios. And this is why it took so long to make this thing. 1:1 is saturation, no compression. You run it through the beautiful circuitry. Now, the interesting thing about this from a topological standpoint, which is a design standpoint, is that it's transformerless. And transformers make stuff fat, and transformerless make things clear and fast. And this is transformerless, right? And a lot, like my amp is transformerless in my studio. I monitor transformerless. It's a faster, cleaner, clearer sound, not as thick, but it's more clinical. And that's part of the sound of a Distressor. When people say, why did this Distressor sound so good and clean and clear and quick? And that's because of its transformerless design. And again, I love transformers. They're fat, but sometimes you want to control the fat in a different way. So anyway, that's the vibe. 2:1 ratio is a 2:1 ratio, and 3:1, 4:1, 6:1, 10:1 is an optical mode, and it actually has different circuitry. So if you shift click on 10, watch the attack and release. Pang, they just popped into the starting sort of settings for this optical compressor. And it sort of turns this into a rolling optical detector like an LA2A. So it's actually different circuitry inside. That's one of the reasons it took Slate so long to do this. Then there's a 20:1, and there's a nuke. Now here's the thing, and we're going to give this a listen in just a minute. Each ratio has a different knee. What is a knee? A knee is how the shape at which the gain reduction onset occurs. Does it go linear straight to the ratio value, or does it ease its way, right? So soft knee eases its way toward the gain reduction setting as prescribed by all the settings and the ratio. Hard knee goes straight there. it's hard to hear soft knee because it eases its way to the value. So each one of these ratios has sort of like a different knee. That's why this is such a complex compressor. It's totally different than your FabFilter Pro C2, whereas we change the ratios, it's just the math. It doesn't change the shape at which it approaches it. This is much more analog-y, right? This is 20 years old, this compressor. And so when you have to get to know each ratio like a neighborhood in a city. They sound different, they act different, and everything, right? So that's the big thing to take away from learning the Distressor and becoming friends with it. Best friends is that each ratio is its own personality, literally. Here are some detection filters. This is a low cut or a high pass filter on the detector circuitry, which means that you're telling the compressor, hey, don't listen to the low frequency stuff. Don't get triggered by the lows, right? The kick, the bass, whatever. So if you put this on a drum bus, which we will in a minute, if you punch this in, all of a sudden, all of your low end power comes back, right? We're putting a filter on the internal sidechain and saying, hey, don't listen to the lows. So this can work in a million ways. Actually, it's wonderful. It doesn't turn it into a multiband compressor. It's not just compressing the mid-range. It's just the single band compression is not being triggered by the low frequencies. It doesn't turn it into Pro MB, right? That's not what it does. This is just a gem. And this is a 6K bell bias that you can use in addition to the low cut. And this just makes the compressor very sensitive to 6K. And, 6K, it seems like that's the frequency that a lot of mastering engineers say. I just make sure there's not too much 6K. 6K is sort of right in the center of our frequency sensitivity of our ears, and it can be harsh. So this is telling the compressor, hey, whenever you see some 6K, start to compress. And it has a wonderful smoothing effect and can be also combined with the low cut. This is a stereo link. And so if you have a stereo sound that has a defined center image, like a lead vocal, if you unlink the left and right detectors too much, the lead vocal starts to swing back and forth like a pan man from Sound Toys, like an auto panner. And that would probably not be good. So you can link them. But if you have a stereo sound like a stereo synth, it's cool to leave them unlinked. Unlinked compression, stereo compression, where there isn't a fixed center image, is wider sounding and is really, really cool. Okay, so this is all the filters and linking of the detectors. This is the actual audio output over here. And this is a low cut. I think both these low cuts are at 80. The Slate manual said 86. The Empirical Labs one said 80. I don't know if that's a typo. I don't know. But anyway, this actually cuts low frequencies off the output. So, just like a rumble filter on a microphone. And especially if you're recording and you want to make sure that there's no rumble going to your recording, you can cut it. Different from cutting from the detector. And you can do both. So that's actually an EQ on the output. And here's where the grungy fun happens. Distortion 2 and distortion 3. So, harmonics are musically generated when we overdrive things. So when you overdrive this and you punch this on, or even when you drive it at all, you're going to get the second harmonic. So if the fundamental would be like 100 hertz, you get the octave up, which is 200. And that has got a fattening, thickening sort of effect. Now, if you hit distortion 3, you get the third harmonic. And the third harmonic, where do we see the third harmonic a lot? I know you guys are super smart. Tape, exactly. No one's faster than Justin. Like a game show. He's quick on the buzzer. Tape, 100% Justin. So now, in the Empirical Labs manual, it says that when you hit distortion 3, you're getting the second and the third harmonic. In the Slate manual, it says only the second or only the third. I don't think that that's right. I think that's a typo, especially if they took 2 years to model the real thing. So when you hit 3, you're getting 2 and 3. And that's why you can't hit 2 and 3, because you're already getting 2 and 3 when you hit 3. So you're getting the second and the third. And it's a thickener, it makes things richer, it makes things thicker, and you can even make them fuzzy and grungy too. Now here's the cool thing that the original hardware doesn't have, is a wet dry mix. And as we know, this allows us to do really crazy extreme stuff and then blend in a little bit of it. Parallel processing, New York style compression. Yeah. So that is a grand tour. Let's give this thing a listen. If you're on a smartphone or a tablet, this won't work, but we will send you a link later where you can watch the video. And for everyone else, this should work actually quite nicely. And you'll give me a thumbs up in the chat. Can people hear the dancehall beat? Yes. Okay, beautiful. All right. So with all that stuff being said, first we're going to just listen to it. They say, whenever you turn on a Distressor, and this is in the manual from 20 years ago, it's put everything on 5 and put it at a 6-to-1 ratio, and everything will sound good, which I love. I love the spirit of. So I said, well, let's do this, Mr. Durr, right there. Let's just start it off where you said at the default and check it out and start to get a feel for the sound. So there you go. Right away, we see it does a lot of compression. It's in clean mode. It's got that clean transformerless sound that I'm a big fan of. And it can do a lot of gain reduction and just sound groovy, right? So that's just the start. So now let's take a little bit of a walk through these ratios. Again, the thing to remember about this is that the different ratios have different knees. They're going to sound different. It's not like any other compressor you've done before where you flick through the ratios and get sort of a even response. You're going to see each one of these is its own ratio knee flavor. And that's your 1-to-1. So that's if you just want to use it as a saturator with no compression, which is a very cool way to do it. So now let's listen to the compression ratios. And you hear, as soon as we jump to 10-to-1, that's the optical mode, but it's not really in an optical setting, but you hear the different circuitry, right? That's a huge jump. I'll just rewind and play that again. You'll see that you go to a completely different space with that. So can everybody start to hear sort of like how these ratios really sound quite different from each other, right? It's a unique compressor like that. Okay. So now let's check out this punching in the filter on the internal sidechain. And what you're going to hear is that the low frequencies are all of a sudden going to get much bigger since they're not triggering the compression. So this is definitely what you want when you're doing a drum bus, but it can even work for acoustic guitars, anything, or a vocal where you just want the low end to be free of the compression, or free from triggering the compression, I should say. Here is that 6K biased compression, and man, you could almost leave this thing on all the time. It just makes everything sound better, and it's going to interact differently on different things, but it's got this wonderful smoothing effect. I'm just going to back up again so you can hear the detectors one more time. So now we're going to go into the different distortion modes. Sometimes they're easy to hear, sometimes they're not. And don't think that you're crazy or there's something wrong with you. The harder you drive the input, the more we can exaggerate them, but they can also be subtle. So again, this is the second harmonic, and then we'll hear the second and third. Sometimes it's more obvious than others. That's just what you'll find. And of course, that is the low cut on the output, which you can just use tonally for things where you're just like, hey, it's always nice to have a high pass filter sitting around when you're channel stripping stuff at the channel strip bar. We have to do something with that. Strip club, channel strip club, something, right? Something to do there. So now we'll just exaggerate a little bit of that driving the input. We see the little harmonic distortion lights flicker. And you could see that you can still do a ton of gain reduction with this thing. And it sounds good. And that, God bless those people at Slate, because that's probably not that easy to recreate. And they did it. And that's one of the things that people loved about the real analog, is that you could do 20 dB of gain reduction and it sounded good. And there just aren't a lot of units out there that can do that. So that's my creation there of sort of a parallel compression drum bus. Go extreme, drive it like crazy, get a lot of gain reduction, put in the saturation, and then just blend in a little bit, right? I'll just play a piece of that and then we'll move on. But that's how you can do something kind of extreme and then just blend it in. Let's move on to guitars now. And the Distressor is incredibly famous for being the best compressor for acoustic guitars and guitars in general because of its quick sound, its transformerless sound, and its flexibility. So let's give it a little listen on a guitar. So here we are in 2-to-1 mode, and 2-to-1 mode from the original manual is the one that says sounds the most like analog tape. Now, if you noticed, I did that sort of shift input drive output thing, and to my taste, it's not quite right yet because as I drive it harder, it takes the output down too much, it seems. So I'll show it to you once again here. I think you can use it, but then you got to touch it up by hand a little bit. So, even though this is not a drum bus, that the low cut on the internal sidechain gives a fullness to it, And if it was solo acoustic guitar, where the acoustic guitar was supposed to really carry what the bass would be playing if there was a bass, it's great for that, right? If you have to fit an acoustic guitar into a very dense mix, you might want those lows to, more controlled. But it's not just for drums. And there's that 6K biasing detector to smooth stuff out again, right? Super cool. now we did that shift click on the 10-to-1 ratio, and it popped us into that the optical mode with the 10 attack and the 0 release as a starting place. But just to be clear to everybody, you don't have to leave it at that, right? You can definitely play with the attack and release. That's just the starting place. Now, has anyone ever done the 1176 distortion trick, which is to make the attack and release the fastest, and you get that crunch, right? Because the compressor's freaking out. It's releasing so quickly and attacking so quickly that you get this grungy thing. Okay, good. So that's just like an old school engineer crunchy 1176 thing. And this thing, and you can only do it with the 1176 because it attacks and releases so quickly that it gets what we call sort of release jitter and attack jitter. Well, the Distressor does the same thing, and you can get some interesting little grungy sounds. And if you ever hear that grungy thing and it's driving you nuts and you want to get rid of it, it's not intentional. The way you get rid of it, slow release. Just slow the release down and it will stop wiggling like that. Okay, so let's now do one more sound. Let's go to a bass. And let's check out the bass. Okay. All right. So here is a bass sound meets the FG stress. And, the controls, just like a real Distressor, they react. It's not one of those compressors where you're like, is it me or is nothing changing or it's weird? Like the attack acts like an attack. The release acts like a release. And that's characteristic of the real hardware. And again, so if we want a bass sound to have more percussive transient power, we want a slower attack. Right? So you can see here, as I slow down that attack, lengthen the attack time, the power comes in, right? So, and why do we compress? For power. And this thing gives you quite a bit of power. And it's responsive. That's my point. And as we know from compression theory, which we spend a whole week on in our famous Mixing Foundations class, which I recommend everybody take, no matter how advanced you are, everyone should take Mixing Foundations. People have jumped into the school, been like, no, I don't need all that. And they get halfway through and they're like, you know what? I'm going to take Mixing Foundations. It just starts, it's a system that we have in our school. It's not a bunch of techniques. It's a system. And it starts with Mixing Foundations. We spend a whole week doing compression and Mixing Foundations. So, as we know from compression theory, fast releases are less compressed, more bouncy. Slow releases are more gluey and have more compression, lead to more gain reduction. So let's and again, the attack and release, very responsive on this plugin. And man, those ratios, each one is its own animal. It's very, very interesting. It's a big part of when you use this thing is, just picking the ratio because it changes everything, right? And I thought on this bass, it was particularly easier to hear the different distortion, right? I thought on the bass, both the biasing detector on the 6K, which I think sounds great on almost everything. I think you could almost just leave it on the whole time. On this bass, I thought it was more apparent hearing the second and third harmonic. And we'll send you a link to rewatch the video. But of course, try it out for yourself. These are just Apple loops, right? So I thought it was easier to hear on the bass. So, making that bass sound much bigger and rounder and zestier and fuller and musical and so cool. I'm psyched, you guys. I'm psyched. I am psyched, and regardless if another company comes out with the Distressor in the next couple weeks and we'll shoot it out and we'll do all that stuff, this is a win. This is a win for us mixers because of the DSP efficiency of the Slate product line, right? That's the punchline to this whole thing, is it's not UAD versus Slate. I mean, we say that for fun, but it's UAD and Slate. And the fact that we have this wonderful Distressor compressor that I've been waiting 20 years to show up in a plugin form, and that it's so DSP efficient, this is going to be all over everybody's mixes. So regardless of whatever else happens, which will be very interesting and I'll be excited, this is a win for us. Yeah, this is a win for us mixer people who love music production, and love mixing. This is fantastic. So it is Christmas in October. Anyway, that's the presentation for today. I want to thank everyone for coming out and hanging out. Great to see everybody. If you're new, welcome. Great to meet you. Returning people, great to see you guys. Amazing. Well, I'll send you a link to rewatch this. Go play with it. We are the #1 mixing and mastering school in the world, which is kind of fun to say, and it's true. So if you need anything from us, we have all kinds of courses, self-study courses. If you want videos and self-study, if you want to take a class with me every week and have students and other fellow students and times, we have that too. We have both systems. And anything you need, we're here to help you. So hit us on the live chat. That's how you get us, and we're always right there for you. Thank you, Mike Hooks, for setting everything up today. Great to see you. I'll stay for a few minutes. If anyone had questions, I know I missed a couple questions in the chat. So please let me know. Excellent, Francis. Yeah, either way, Francis, whatever you need, we're here to help you. So don't worry. We'll smooth it out for you in anything you need. Any questions at all? 100%. Any questions? Okay, thanks is good. You have to go into this plugin very gently, like almost all Slate stuff. It's -18. So, if you find that you can't get any good resolution on the plugin, it's probably because you're going in too loud. If you came late, this was supposed to be a comparison, but there's so much to do explaining the Distressor, I couldn't fit it into an hour. So there'll be a part 2, and I'll let everybody know via email when this other company comes out. So for those super advanced people, what does this FG Stress not have that maybe this other plugin company might put in? Anybody know? I know. Not mid-side, no. I'll give everyone a hint. It's an upgrade option. No, upgrade option in the actual hardware. That's a good hint. The British mode, precisely. Exactly, Brit mode. Exactly, Jake and Justin. Will be interesting to see if this perhaps other company puts a Brit mode in, because that's a whole nother kettle of fish, right? And what's funny is Slate already has a Brit mode. What is that called? Slate already has a Brit mode plugin. What's it called? The Monster. Exactly. The Monster. And here's the thing. The Monster, yes, I certainly can, Marshall. We're actually finalizing it, making it look good, and it'll come out. It's what I learned in Mixing Camp this summer. It'll be coming very soon. It's cooking on the front burner. The Monster's so good. If you guys haven't dealt with the Monster, there's a Brit mode in the Monster, which makes me believe that theoretically they could put it in this, but probably they're so exhausted from 2 years of doing this that they want to leave it alone for a while. And I don't blame them. They did a great job. People at Slate did a great job on this, and I'm really thankful, actually. Very, very thankful. All right, everybody, listen, great to see everybody. Have a wonderful week. Let us know if there's anything our school can do for you. We're here, and we're happy to help. Absolutely, 100%. All right, cheers, everybody. Have a great rest of your day and evening.